Freedom is a lie to those who are weak. The powerless speak of liberty only to disguise their chains. You think you are free because no one commands you. But tell me who depends on you. Until you control others, your so-called freedom is nothing but permission granted by those who do. In this video, we shall expose the brutal truth. You cannot possess freedom until you first master power. In every age, men dream of freedom. They write poems to it, die for it, and yet never truly attain it. For what is freedom without the power to protect it? A candle in the storm, easily extinguished. I have seen rulers fall because they mistook liberty for strength. And I have seen slaves rise, not by breaking chains, but by learning who forged them. To seek freedom before power is to demand respect before becoming dangerous. The world does not listen to the powerless, it tolerates them. So let us speak plainly. Without morality or illusion, true freedom belongs only to those who first learn to dominate, manipulate, and command the will of others. They tell you that you are free because you can choose. Choose your job. Choose your partner. Choose what to believe. But choice, my friend, is not power. It is the illusion of it. Look around you. Every option presented to you was designed by someone else. Someone with the power to define what those choices even are. You pick between two cages and call it liberty. The merchant tells you that freedom is buying what you desire. The politician tells you freedom is the right to speak. But both quietly control what you can desire and what you are allowed to say. This is how the powerful rule without needing to chain anyone. They simply shape the boundaries of what you believe freedom is. The Romans understood this well. When they conquered a province, they did not enslave every man. No, that would be costly and provoke rebellion. Instead, they allowed their subjects to believe they were free, to trade, to worship, to speak. But Rome controlled the laws, the roads, the coin. They controlled the structure that made those choices possible. And so men lived content under the empire, celebrating their freedom, while every grain of wheat they ate depended on the approval of Rome. That, my friend, is real power. The power to make others celebrate their own submission. You think you are not living in an empire? Then ask yourself this: who controls your time? Who defines what success means? Who decides which voices are amplified and which are silenced under the illusion of choice? Most people will never ask these questions because illusion comforts them. It gives them the sweet taste of autonomy without the bitter responsibility of control. They would rather be distracted with toys of self-expression than face the truth, that their freedom exists only within the walls built by stronger minds. And yet, this illusion is useful. For those who understand, it can create the illusion in others. That is the first law of manipulation: control perception, and you control reality. Make your subordinates feel free, and they will serve you with loyalty rather than resistance. A servant who believes he is free works harder than one who knows he is chained. This principle governs every empire, every corporation, every relationship of dominance. You don't need to take freedom from others. You simply redefine it in a way that serves your interests. The greatest rulers of history, Augustus, Napoleon, and even modern tyrants disguised as liberators, understood this psychological truth. They did not crush the will of the masses. They guided it, redirecting human desire toward controlled illusions. Freedom is not destroyed by oppression. It is destroyed by comfort. The man who is fed, entertained, and told he is important no longer questions who holds the leash. He calls his submission choice. The mind that seeks true power must learn to see through these veils. Ask yourself, do you act or do you react? Do you create the path or do you walk one that was paved long before you? Most men react to invisible hands, conditioned to move toward pleasure and away from pain, never realizing that both are levers of control. The psychologist B.F. Skinner once demonstrated this with rats in boxes. They pressed a lever, received food, and believed they were in control of their reward. But the timing, the quantity, the very existence of the food, all determined by the experimenter. The rats had choices, yes, but only within the boundaries their master defined. Now tell me, How different are most men from those rats? To become powerful, you must step outside the box. You must recognize who designs the choices you take for granted. In politics, in love, in business, those who hold power always dictate the menu, while the powerless simply pick what they're offered and call it independence. Real power is in designing the menu. Do not seek endless options. Seek control over options. Because when you decide what others can choose between, you already own their freedom. Remember, the illusion of freedom is the most effective form of control ever created. And most will live and die inside it, smiling, convinced they were never ruled. But you are here because you wish to see beyond the veil. You sense that choice itself is a weapon in the hands of the cunning. That the one who defines reality owns reality. So I ask you, are you ready to stop choosing and start creating? Because only those who pierce this illusion are worthy to hear the next law, the one that reveals how dependency quietly kills all power. Continue, and you will understand why even freedom must be built on domination. Every chain begins with a favor. Every cage begins with comfort. And every slave once whispered, "I can't live without this." Dependency, my friend, is the silent poison that kills freedom before you even notice. It doesn't come wrapped in iron. It comes dressed as love, money, or safety. It speaks softly. It tells you, relax, you are taken care of. But the moment you depend, you are owned. The powerful never depend. They make others depend on them. Because in every human relationship, one side holds the leash and the other pretends it doesn't exist. Ask yourself, on whom does your comfort rely? Your employer, your partner, your government? Who must keep approving your existence for you to feel secure? Who must keep paying, validating, or feeding you for your world not to fall apart? Most men are not ruled by tyrants. They are ruled by their dependencies. They call them necessities. They defend them as normal. But what is normal if not the chain everyone has agreed to wear? Consider the Medici of Florence. They did not conquer their city with swords. They conquered it with credit. Every noble, every artist, every merchant owed them money. And when a man owes you, you no longer need to threaten him. You only need to delay his next loan. The Medicis controlled the pulse of the city not by fear, but by debt. Dependency gave them absolute command without a single soldier. Today, the same system thrives, only the language has changed. Credit cards, salaries, social validation, these are the modern instruments of control. They make men comfortable, predictable, and afraid to lose what keeps them fed. Tell a man you'll double his income, and he'll follow your rules. Threaten to take away his comfort, and he'll beg to serve. You see, the one who gives you what you need owns your decisions. You may speak of freedom, but your thoughts are edited by what you fear to lose. Dependency corrupts judgment. It bends your will without breaking it. That is what makes it so effective. A ruler does not need to imprison his people. He only needs to make them need him. Need creates obedience. Obedience creates stability. And stability, as history shows, always favors the one at the top. Think of the lover who cannot let go of the one who mistreats them. They justify the pain because the thought of being alone terrifies them more. That is dependency disguised as affection. The other party holds emotional power, a leash woven from fear, validation, and habit, or the employee who despises his superior yet remains silent. He tells himself he has no choice. But in truth, he made his choice long ago, when he allowed his livelihood to depend on another man's approval. To the cunning mind, dependency is opportunity. It is how leaders control followers, how mentors shape students, how rulers pacify masses. Create a need, then offer the solution. That is the essence of control. Every empire, every religion, every corporation knows this. They first convince you that something essential is missing in you. Then they present themselves as the savior of that lack. And once you depend, you are theirs, mind, body, and will. Freedom begins when you reverse this equation. When you make others depend on your existence. When your absence costs them more than your presence. The one who is needed is always safer than the one who needs. So how do you destroy dependency? First, by embracing solitude. The mind that cannot be alone cannot be free. Second, by mastering self-sufficiency, learn to feed your mind, your body, and your ambition without waiting for permission or supply. And third, by withholding what others crave most: attention, validation, approval. He who withholds becomes the source, and he who becomes the source controls the flow of power. Power, after all, is nothing but the art of making others unable to live without you. And once you understand this, you begin to see how rulers are made. So remember this truth: dependency builds empires for the few and prisons for the many. The wise choose to be the architect, never the prisoner. Now ask yourself, in your life, who depends on you, and on whom do you depend? Because that answer will reveal whether you are the ruler or the ruled. You can either be necessary or you can be free, but never both. And when you truly grasp that, you will be ready for the next revelation, the one that exposes how power creates permission and freedom is merely its shadow. Power always speaks first, even when it whispers. It decides what is allowed, what is punished, and what is praised. The rest of the world simply calls its decisions freedom. You see, freedom is not born in the hearts of men. It is granted by those who possess the strength to defend it. Without power, freedom is an idea. With power, it becomes a law. The weak think they must be free before they can pursue power. The strong understand they must first gain power to deserve freedom, because no man is truly free who must ask permission to act. Consider this: when a ruler declares liberty, it is not an act of kindness. It is an act of dominance. He alone has the authority to allow liberty, and what can be granted can just as easily be taken away. Every revolution that promised freedom followed this same pattern. The people rose, shouting for liberation, only to kneel later before a new master. The chains changed form, but the hands that held them were always those of the powerful. It is not freedom that rules the world, it is permission. And permission is the child of power. Take Napoleon. He did not beg for freedom, he seized it. He crowned himself emperor in front of the Pope, turning divine blessing into a mere accessory to his will. The world called him a tyrant, but it also called him great. Why? Because men forgive tyranny when it is wrapped in glory. They admire the one who bends rules instead of obeying them. Freedom without power makes you moral. Power without freedom makes you feared. But when you unite both, you become untouchable. Now look at your own life. How often do you ask for permission to exist, to speak, to act, to desire what you truly want? How often do you lower your tone because someone above you might disapprove? Power does not ask, it takes. And those who wait for permission will always serve those who do not. The philosopher Spinoza once said that freedom is understanding necessity. But I say, freedom is the privilege of those who create necessity for others. When others depend on you, they cannot deny you anything. Their approval becomes irrelevant because your power defines the limits of their resistance. Think of the lion in the wild. It does not need permission to eat, to sleep, to rule. Its presence alone grants it freedom, because everything around it moves in response to its will. Now think of the deer. It runs fast, agile, proud of its grace, but its entire life depends on the lion's hunger. Which one is truly free? In human society, the same law prevails. The businessman who controls wealth controls the choices of those who work beneath him. The politician who controls law controls the voice of those who believe they are free to speak. And the lover who controls emotion dictates the rhythm of the relationship, even when they appear submissive. Freedom follows power like a shadow follows light. You cannot chase the shadow without first holding the flame. The weak call this cruelty, the strong call it reality. Because the world does not run on fairness, it runs on dominance disguised as order. You are told you are free because you can choose. But look closer. Your choices are limited by what the powerful allow. You can rise, but only within their structure. You can speak, but only within their rules. Even rebellion, if it grows too large, becomes another instrument for those who control it. That is why true mastery begins not with defiance, but with acquisition. Acquire the means to command, and permission will follow. People will begin to call your ambitions vision. Your control will be mistaken for leadership. Your manipulation will be called strategy. And the very ones who once restrained you will now beg for your approval. Power does not just protect freedom, it redefines it. It allows you to act beyond morality, beyond fear, beyond apology. For when men see your strength, they rewrite their ethics to fit your actions. History always forgives the victor. So stop seeking permission from the world. The world belongs to those who dare to authorize themselves. When you gain power, you no longer need to ask if something is allowed. You make it allowed. This is the secret every ruler knows, and every idealist forgets freedom is not the cause of power. It is its reward. And yet, there is a darker truth waiting beneath this. That even the most powerful man is not truly free until he learns to rule the one enemy he cannot conquer by force. Before you conquer kingdoms, you must first conquer yourself. Because the man who cannot command his own emotions will never command the world. You have seen powerful men destroyed not by armies, but by anger. Empires crumble not when enemies invade, but when leaders lose control of themselves. Emotion, when ungoverned, turns a ruler into a servant, obedient not to reason, but to impulse. The first territory of power is not land, wealth, or influence. It is the territory within, the mind that can bend emotion to its will. Ask yourself this: when you are insulted, do you control your response, or does your anger decide it for you? When you are ignored, does silence empower you, or does it make you desperate to be seen? When you desire something, do you possess your desire, or does it possess you? Power begins when your emotions serve your strategy. The weak let emotions lead them, the strong use them as tools. Look at history. Caesar was betrayed by men he called friends, yet he never raged in public. He smiled, planned, and waited until his enemies revealed themselves. He knew that one display of anger could destroy months of silent preparation. Even when surrounded by daggers, his calm unnerved those who struck him. That is true power, to remain unmoved when others tremble. Now contrast this with Alexander the Great. A man of unmatched ambition, yet slave to his passions. In a moment of drunken fury, he killed Cletus, one of his most loyal generals. And though he wept afterward, his remorse could not restore respect. His army saw the truth: their leader was no longer in control of himself. The man who could conquer continents could not conquer his own temper. And from that moment, his empire began to rot. Tell me, how many times have you destroyed something valuable because you could not wait? A relationship, a deal, an opportunity. All lost not to logic, but to the storm inside you. That is how most men fall, not through defeat, but through reaction. The wise ruler studies his emotions as a general studies terrain. He does not suppress them. He maps them. He learns when to show compassion and when to show indifference. When to display rage to strike fear, and when to wear calm to invite trust. Every emotion can serve a purpose if wielded deliberately. Think of emotion as fire. Uncontrolled, it burns and destroys. Controlled, it forges weapons and builds empires. Most men fear their fire, a few worship it blindly. But the master learns to contain it, to release it only when it advances his design. In the art of manipulation, emotional control is your most lethal weapon. Because people believe emotion equals honesty. If you remain calm when others are lost in passion, they assume you are pure, stable, trustworthy. They open their hearts to you, unaware that your composure is a mask. And through that mask, you can move entire crowds while revealing nothing of yourself. The powerful do not need to shout. Their silence carries weight because it suggests calculation. The loudest man in the room is always the weakest. He reveals too much. The silent man terrifies because silence implies certainty. Even love, the softest of emotions, becomes dangerous when controlled. When you can love without attachment, you become unbreakable. When others need your affection to feel whole, you control them without lifting a finger. He who feels less rules more. This is not cruelty, it is strategy. To lead, to manipulate, to dominate, you must first become your own master, because emotion is the leash by which the world leads men. Those who cannot detach are easily provoked, predictable, and defeated. And so, you must learn the art of stillness, the art of holding rage in your hand and deciding whether to release it or not, the art of smiling when your blood boils, the art of waiting while others reveal their weakness through noise. When you rule your emotions, you no longer need to chase control. It comes to you naturally. People follow those who appear unaffected by chaos because stability is magnetic. In a world of impulsive fools, composure looks divine. So practice this. Be slow to anger. Be immune to flattery. Be indifferent to praise and insult alike. Because when nothing external can move you, everything external bends to you. And that, my friend, is where all power begins. Not in gold, not in armies, but in temperance. He who rules himself commands the foundation of every throne. But remember, the mind that conquers emotion must still learn how to bend others with it. For mastery of self is only half the war. The next begins when you turn other people's emotions into your battlefield. Power does not always roar. Sometimes it bows. Sometimes it smiles, agrees, and waits. The cunning man knows that direct defiance exposes his position too soon. He bends, not out of weakness, but out of strategy. He lowers his head only to study the enemy's hand more closely. Because to conquer, you must first survive long enough to strike. The world mistakes submission for defeat. But the wise know it is a disguise, one that conceals ambition beneath humility. It is how slaves become rulers and how the underestimated rise unseen. Ask yourself, have you ever yielded in silence, only to win later by patience? Have you ever allowed another to believe they were in control, while you quietly gathered leverage? If you have, then you already know the taste of strategic submission. Throughout history, the greatest conquerors mastered this art long before they mastered war. Julius Caesar, before he ruled Rome, flattered those he despised. He smiled at men he planned to destroy. He served them, praised them, let them grow arrogant, until their guard dropped. And when the time came, he rose with such force that no one saw the knife until it was already inside. Submission, in the hands of the intelligent, becomes camouflage. It is how the serpent hides beneath the grass, while the lion sleeps in the open. It is how power gathers strength in the shadows, unseen, unthreatened, until the moment it decides to strike. But most men cannot bear the taste of humility. Their pride betrays them long before their enemies do. They must prove themselves, argue, defend, display dominance, without realizing that visibility is vulnerability. The man who must be seen as powerful is already insecure. The one who can hide his ambition is dangerous. Strategic submission is the art of letting others feed your rise. When you appear obedient, superiors grow careless. When you appear harmless, rivals grow lazy. And when you appear weak, the arrogant reveal their plans. Their confidence becomes your weapon. There is a reason a bow must bend before it can launch the arrow. Resistance without timing is wasted strength. Control comes not from constant defiance, but from precision, knowing when to yield and when to strike. Think of the apprentice who flatters his master. He learns, he observes, he agrees. The master feels adored, unthreatened. But slowly the apprentice absorbs every skill, every secret. And one day, the master realizes the student has surpassed him, not through rebellion, but through patient obedience. That is strategic submission. Victory earned through the illusion of loyalty. Even in modern power structures, this principle reigns. The clever employee nods to his superior's every demand, while quietly building alliances beneath him. The politician publicly supports stronger figures until their fall becomes convenient. The lover plays soft, vulnerable, compliant, until the other becomes dependent and the roles quietly reverse. This is not deception for its own sake. It is survival in a world where showing your fangs too soon gets you killed. The tiger crouches before it leaps. The wave pulls back before it strikes the shore. All great power moves backward before it moves forward. To bend is not to break. It is to gather force. The oak that resists every storm shatters, the reed that bends survives. So too with people. Those who can endure humiliation without losing direction always rise. Those who cannot fall by pride. The greatest strategist is the one who can make others believe they are winning. When your opponent thinks he has conquered you, he stops defending himself. That is the moment you become free. That is the moment you strike. Understand this: submission is not surrender. It is transformation. You shift shape to survive, to learn, to infiltrate. The true ruler is often invisible until the day he decides not to be. And by then, it is too late for anyone to stop him. So next time you feel underestimated, mocked, or dominated, smile. Do not fight for your ego, fight for position. Because the moment you react, you expose yourself. But if you remain silent, calm, patient, you are already winning. Strategic submission turns every defeat into preparation. It turns humiliation into disguise and servitude into a throne in waiting. No one fears the obedient, and that is your advantage. For fear closes doors, but obedience opens them all. Remember, the wise man bends today so he can break tomorrow's masters. The fool resists now and dies forgotten. Power is patient. It knows that every empire begins in silence, and every great conqueror once bowed to a greater power, only to later replace it. But there is a darker mastery still to come. Because once you have learned to bend, the question becomes, can you bend others to your will, without them ever realizing it? Everyone speaks of freedom, few understand it, and fewer still realize that most forms of freedom are traps, beautiful, golden traps built by those who hold real power. You think you are free because no one commands you. But tell me, who funds your comfort? Who controls the laws that shape your choices? Who decides what is good, moral, or acceptable? The illusion of freedom is the masterpiece of the powerful. It pacifies rebellion before it begins. The greatest rulers of history never needed to chain the body, they only needed to convince the mind that it was already free. And so men became loyal slaves, singing hymns to their liberty. A true power lies in granting others just enough freedom to keep them obedient. Too little, and they revolt. Too much, and they forget who allows it. Balance it perfectly, and they will call you merciful while living in your cage. Consider the Roman Empire once more. Rome did not suppress every conquered people. It allowed them to govern themselves, to worship their gods, to trade freely. But all roads, all taxes, all judgments flowed through Rome. There, freedom was carefully measured, engineered to create dependency. And so, the conquered became willing participants in their own control. Do you see the brilliance? The empire appeared generous, yet every ounce of liberty served Rome's stability. That is how power disguises domination as benevolence. Modern rulers have perfected this art. They promise you choice, independence, and self-expression, then quietly shape what those words mean. They let you speak, but filter what can be heard. They let you work, but define what success looks like. They let you dream, but make sure your dreams feed their machine. And all the while, you believe you are free. This is the essence of control. Freedom without power is merely permission. Permission can be revoked. Power cannot. Ask yourself, what kind of freedom do you possess? Freedom to speak or power to be heard? Freedom to act or power to make others comply? Freedom to live or power to decide how you live? Without power, freedom becomes dependence disguised as choice. The weak celebrate every privilege granted to them. The powerful create privileges for themselves. The difference is everything. Look at any democracy, and you will see this illusion. The masses believe they rule because they vote. But their choices are sculpted by propaganda, wealth, and influence. They fight over options pre-selected by the powerful. Options that change nothing of substance. And when the people feel their voice matters, they stop questioning who controls the stage. That is how freedom is weaponized. In relationships, it is no different. The partner who allows, the other freedom already holds control. The permission itself is proof of hierarchy. Love becomes a polite negotiation of who holds power and who merely borrows it. Freedom, then, is not an absolute. It is a mask worn by control, and those who fail to see this mistake liberty for equality when it is often only tolerance. To be truly free, you must first earn the power to define your own limits. Otherwise, your freedom will always exist inside the walls built by others. Power gives you the right to decide what freedom means. It allows you to act without asking, to move without fear, to speak without apology. It transforms freedom from a privilege into a weapon. The French philosopher Voltaire once said, "To learn who rules over you, simply find out whom you are not allowed to criticize." And that, my friend, reveals everything. Freedom ends where real power begins. So, if you wish to be free, do not chase liberty, chase strength. Build the capacity to refuse, to walk away, to define your own reality. Because no law, no moral code, no belief system can enslave the man who no longer depends on them. That is why true rulers fear the self-reliant. He who needs nothing cannot be manipulated. He who can take what he desires does not beg for permission, and he who commands others' dependence becomes the architect of their freedom. But the masses do not want this truth. They crave safety over sovereignty. They prefer the illusion of choice to the burden of power. It is easier to live inside a gilded cage than to face the storm outside it. So the powerful give them toys, distractions, freedoms that feel real but change nothing. And the people call it progress. They are free, but only in ways that keep them harmless. The wise man, however, sees through the illusion. He does not beg for liberty, he claims it. He does not shout about freedom, he builds the power to enforce it. For he understands that the only true freedom is the one that cannot be taken, and that freedom comes only through control. But there remains one last truth to confront. Even the man who rules others may still be ruled by something far deeper. Power is not taken by force. It is planted, quietly, inside the minds of others. Control begins where awareness ends. You do not need chains when belief itself binds them. A word repeated often enough becomes truth. A truth believed deeply enough becomes obedience. That is how the wise rule the foolish. Not by domination, but by suggestion. Not by fear, but by illusion. So ask yourself, how many of your choices are truly yours? How many thoughts were placed there by another hand? The art of control lies not in commanding others, but in making them choose what you desire. Once they think it was their decision, your power becomes invisible and eternal. If this truth unsettles you, good, it means you are beginning to see. Now, tell me in the comments, how do you control without being seen? Subscribe to join this circle of strategy. Share this video with those who still sleep. And let them learn what true power looks like in silence.